Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Andres Bios, and I hope you guys really enjoy the video. I put a lot of effort into it and a lot of time as well, so I hope you guys enjoy. Today, I will be trying to simplify what learning is in general and explaining its three subcategories of classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and observational learning. Now, you might be asking yourself, what is learning? Well, I had my friend go over the actual definition of what learning is, so go ahead and give it a listen.
To start off with the general definition of learning, we have the acquisition of knowledge or skills through experience, study, or by being taught.
So the best way I could describe what learning means in terms of psychology would be creating some type of habit. Now, this could be seen in both humans and animals, as Pavlov clearly showed when he would ring the bell and then the dog would begin to drool. This was a routine which created the habit of drooling and so on. But this could also be applied to humans when we either do something like maybe go to the gym after work, but every time you go, you notice that it's always full right at that time. So you begin to associate that specific time with the busy hours of the gym, thus teaching yourself that you should just wait for the crowd to leave in order for you to get your full workout in. This can be seen in otherwise as a mental note. Now, to start off, the first point, classical conditioning. Now, in order for you guys to understand what classical conditioning is, you need to know the full story. So, Ivan Pavlov was a Russian scientist who was originally studying the digestive systems of dogs. And in the process of feeding them, he noticed that the dogs would begin to drool when they would hear the sound of the bell, meaning that the food was coming. After noticing these really small details, he came to the assumption that the dogs were actually drooling to the sound of the food coming and not the food itself, meaning that these dogs were actually classically conditioned to evoke the response of drooling. Now, the actual definition of classical conditioning is a learning process that occurs when two stimuli are repeatedly paired. A response which is at first elicited by the second stimulus is eventually elicited by the first stimulus alone. Now, before I move on to the next example, I did record a similar situation in which my dog would react to the sound of the fridge opening instead of the bell itself. Now, moving on to the next point, operant conditioning. Although classical and operant do have the word conditioning after them, they have very different ways of going about what learning is or the way it should be taught. Now, quickly before I continue, I just want to give you the quick definition of what operant conditioning means. It's a learning process through which the strength of behavior is modified by reinforcement or punishment. Now, the key words in that is reinforcement and punishment, and you'll see that throughout this section. So, the best way I could break down reinforcement and punishment would be simply putting it as a mental fixing or a physical fixing. Now, the reason why I say fixing would be because of the reason that the child is learning and they're not doing something that they like. So they're doing something unpleasant in order to get rewarded or actually to learn something or gain something from it. Now, both punishment and reinforcement have an addition, which is positive, and your removal, which is negative. Now, on the positive of reinforcement, an example would be if you go to church, you'd get ice cream afterwards. That would be your positive reinforcement. A removal or a negative of reinforcement would be if you sit down quietly at church, your parents will stop nagging. So that would be your removal. Now, on the other hand, if we were talking about punishment, a scenario that I could make up would be a dog with the beware sign. So suppose you were a teen of, 17, 18 years old. And a positive would be if the sign said beware and you still try to pet the dog, but you got bit. That would be the addition. But the negative removal would be if your parent told you not to try to pet the dog and you still try to and end up getting caught, you would get grounded. So that would be your removal. Now, moving on to observational learning. Now, the best way I could break down the definition of observational learning would be by stating that it's learning that occurs through the observation of others' behaviors. Now, living proof that observational learning really does exist would be that babies themselves actually, how they say that babies are like sponges from the day that they're born. They begin to learn, so that's why they say that one should actually speak or sing or just talk to a baby, because the more that they learn, the more that they'll develop at an earlier age. A prime example that they did directed towards children and observational learning was the bubble experiment, where they would beat the clown, the rubber inflatable clown actually, and show the video to kids, and then sometimes the kid would imitate what the adult did to the bubble in the video. This just goes to show that observational learning is just the adjustment of one's behaviors according to what we see. I mean, the children didn't learn to hate the doll until after they watched the video. The doll was just a doll to them, but after they seen the video, they grew this hate towards it and were more aggressive whenever they would see it. Now, now this could be applied to different species as well, like parrots, for example, who imitate other people when they talk. Or back to humans, when adults chase trends in order to feel more accomplished and feel more fulfilled within themselves in order to, to fit in actually. I mean, I'm pretty sure we all do that. Before I took this class, I didn't even know that there were so many categories within a branch of psychology. I mean, learning itself has these three subcategories, and I didn't even know they existed, because if you don't sit down and actually, process it, you won't notice it. There's so much. Then there's so much, and their details are so subtle. So I hope you guys learned a little more about learning within psychology and actually took away something from it. So I just want to say thank you for listening to my video.